Hello, friends, and welcome back to r/ProRevenge. And today we have another set of crazy revenge stories for you. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, leave comments so we know what kind of stories you love the most. She kept the receipts and got the vice principal removed from his job. My best friend Karen is a first grade teacher. And as soon as she told me this story, it gave me such a justice boner that I knew I had to retell it here. 2 years ago, Karen had a student named Xavier. Sweet little 6-year-old boy when things were good. But his parents had just gotten divorced, his mom wasn't that great even before she was out of the picture, and his dad was quite disengaged from both his son's behavior and his IEP, Individualized Education Plan. Rather understandably, Xavier acted out in class. He'd refuse to listen to Karen, push other kids, and disrupt class in more ways than I could possibly list. Now, Karen worked her butt off with Xavier to improve his behavior and get his dad more involved in a positive way. She'd often call me and talk about it to decompress because that's what friends are for. But occasionally, Xavier went too far and did something she just couldn't deal with in class, like trying to stab another student in the hand with a pencil. On those occasions, she wrote him up with a referral and sent him to the vice principal. But surprise, surprise, VP was absolutely no help whatsoever. He'd joke around with Xavier, refuse to address the problem Karen sent Xavier there for, give him candy, then lecture Karen for writing up a 6-year-old for any reason because it reflected badly on VP. I'm pretty sure this has to do with the bullcrap known as merit pay, but whatever. Unfortunately, his actions made it significantly harder for Karen to help Xavier. To top it all off, Karen figured out after a few referrals that VP logged into the system and erased each of Xavier's referrals, thus erasing all evidence of Xavier's pattern of behavior. In a word, this is bad. I know nothing about education, but I damn well know that much. My brother was a holy terror in elementary school and got in so much trouble from 3rd to 6th grades that both the principal and vice principal were on a first-name basis with my mom. Those records sure didn't disappear, not into the shredder, and certainly not into the digital either. She reported this to her higher-ups who weren't VP, but they both told him about the complaint and specified that Karen was the one making the complaint. VP was cold and rude with her after that. Nothing was done about it because it seemed to be a one-time thing. But now Karen knew what to do. Every time she had to write Xavier up again, which blessedly began less often as the year went on, she meticulously documented everything herself. Sent herself all the relevant stuff, saved the emails, the whole shebang. By the end of the year, Xavier's behavior has greatly improved thanks to her mentoring and the various ways she learned how to engage him in the classroom. She even talked to his 2nd grade teacher to make sure the woman knew how to work with Xavier. God, Karen went above and beyond for this child. Partway through the next school year, the higher-ups come talk to Karen again. Even though nothing was done about her complaint the previous year, a record had been made of it. As it turns out, another teacher had reported VP for doing the exact same thing to her as he'd done to Karen. If she had anything related to her own ordeal, they wanted to see it. Oh boy, did she. She gave them every single digital receipt she'd accumulated for the better part of the school year to compare with VP's, establishing a pattern of him undermining teachers via erasing students' patterns of behavior. VP was quickly removed from his position as vice principal of Karen's school. Although he wasn't technically fired, he was just moved to a different school and put in a much lesser position and paid significantly less than before. Bonus. He taught history at Karen and Mai's high school while we attended it, and everybody loved him. I look forward to telling this whole story at our reunion because we sure don't like him now. And our second story. My manager was an awful person to me, but I got her fired in an embarrassing fashion. Years ago, shortly after I graduated high school, I got a new job to support myself during college. The new gig was in a pet store, and I was working in the department that sold the fish, aquariums, reptiles, and birds, etc., etc. The store manager was an awesome guy I'll call Kurt. Kurt was an old school guy. He went to work, worked hard, and went home. That's all he expected out of you as well. My immediate manager over my department was this large, snaggletooth witch of a woman. I'll call her Stephanie. We got off to a bad start because she quickly found out that I knew more about reptiles than her. She preferred the fish, whereas I'd kept snakes for the past 4 to 5 years. Her ego couldn't handle a fresh employee not needing her guidance. From then on, she was terrible to me. She singled me out to clean the goldfish tanks and had other employees cover sales every day I worked. She would say rude things to me such as, "You are the weak link in my team. You are the reason I'm having problems in this department." Fast forward about a year. My hours have been cut about 25%. I asked the store manager what the deal was, and he told me that our department had lost too much money between lack of sales and broken merchandise, etc. This puzzled me, but I didn't think much of it because everybody's hours were cut. Simultaneously, myself and a few coworkers had noticed something strange. Stephanie had recently taken much more interest in the customers. She insisted on helping certain customers and sending us to do busy work while they were there. A customer came in one evening and was talking to us about how nice Stephanie is. Turns out Stephanie was breeding mice and selling them to customers outside the store. We found out she was breeding all of her animals, her dogs, turtles, mice, and selling them to customers she met through our store. Not only was this taking business from us, our store had a couple corporate policies. We did not feed nor sell mice as live food for snakes, and we donated a lot of time and money to shelters, and we condemned breeding dogs and cats for sales. Stephanie was making money by selling animals to the customers, all while her department had hours cut for all of its employees. It didn't quite make sense how this was costing us so much money until one evening I thought I had figured it out. Stephanie was an otherwise lazy woman, but when one of her customers came in, she was by their side the whole time. I watched closely as she followed a customer around, helping them pick out a cart full of expensive aquarium decorations, terrarium supplies like lights and bulbs. I followed and wrote down every item she grabbed. I wanted to see where this went. She directed the customer to a register and went to check them out. She's lazy. She would never do this for any other customers. I noted the time and went back to work. I later spoke to other cashiers about Stephanie checking customers out, and they said she only ever rang up certain customers and she acted weird when they did. They suspected that she was abusing coupons for them by applying hefty discounts. I got my coworkers to corroborate my story about the under-the-table animal sales and suspicious behavior and went to talk to Kurt. I handed him a paper with about 20 UPCs and the time written on it, and I said, "I think if you look up a transaction from Register 2 at this time last night, you'll find a large discount applied to it. These are the items I would expect you to find on that transaction." He was a bit puzzled, and I explained everything to him. I told him I didn't want to make any accusations before because I wasn't sure, but after seeing her in action, I was pretty sure something was going on. He thanked me and assured me he would look into it. A couple weeks later, I was at work and I noticed Kurt was standing near the door watching it closely. It just so happened Stephanie was coming in for her shift right about that time. The second she walked through the door, he called her over to his office. Apparently, waiting in his office was a regional manager from corporate. He looked at the list I gave him and looked up the transactions from the night before. He found one at the exact time I wrote, but only had about half of the items I listed. But every item that was on the receipt was on the list I gave him. This prompted him to watch her for a few weeks, and in that time frame, they found her to be taking her customers around shopping, personally taking them up to the register and scanning every other item and putting the expensive stuff in the cart without ringing it up. In that time span, she'd given away over $1,500 in merchandise, and he looked back at the logs we keep for broken merchandise that's written off and found an excessive amount of aquarium supplies and decorations that were signed off by her. It was something like 1,000% more written off broken merchandise than was found at the same time last quarter. All in all, she was charged with stealing/defrauding the store for over $3,500 in merchandise, and it just so happened that Kurt had already arranged for police to meet them after firing her to escort her out. I don't know if she went to jail, but I did watch her get walked out by police with about 20 employees staring. I wish I could have said something, but I had to settle for her making eye contact with me as she walked out, to which I gave her a quick wink. And our third story. Treat your mechanics like crap? Say goodbye to your profit margin. So this happened a few months ago. I'm a heavy-duty mechanic. I was working for a really sketchy backwoods-type trucking company repairing commercial trucks and trailers, the type you see on the highway. There were two big issues I had with the place. Firstly, the foreman, let's call him Joe, was a massive a-hole. Not your average a-hole boss. Imagine every nasty thing a boss has ever done to you, put it together, and you probably have some idea of what it was like to work under him. He was also a massive know-it-all and would do things wrong on purpose just because someone else told him the proper way. Secondly, to call the safety and repair standards terrible would be a compliment. We had a trailer come in once that was broken in half. No joke. They just threw a couple of half-crap patches on the frame and kicked it right back out. It was normal for me to get yelled at for pointing out little insignificant things like axles that were going to fall out and kill someone. I could go on, but it was bad. So this brings me to the revenge part. After working there a while, I'd had enough. I was on the verge of walking out, but had a better idea. I snuck a small camera into work. We weren't supposed to have them. Wonder why. And started documenting all the sketchy stuff that was going on. After a month or so of this, I quit and took all the proof to CVSE and WorkSafe, Canadian DOT and OHS. And for once, the government did something. This is a fairly small company, and they only clear a couple $1 million per year. Last I heard, they'd been forced to pay a few $100,000 in fines, replace almost all of the shop equipment, probably about $300,000, and pay for all sorts of training courses, and had to replace 8 of their trailers at roughly $100,000 per trailer. I suspect they barely even broke even this year. And our last story, for dessert. So, you thought playing with people's paychecks was smart? This happened about 2 years ago. I was working as a crew foreman for a construction company. Pay was great until the check started bouncing due to no funds in the account. After a couple weeks of the boss fixing it by paying us cash, I decided I'd had enough and stopped showing up for work. The owner called and asked me if I was coming back. Keep in mind, he still owed me my last paycheck. I told him if he gave me my check and it cashed, I would come back to work. He says, okay. I go pick up my check and head right to the bank. Teller says no funds in the account, she can't cash it. I did the only rational thing someone in my position would do. I drove to Florida, I live in New York, found a ghetto check cashing place and cashed that check. The owner then had to deal with writing a bad check and had to travel to Florida for court and such. I was thinking this was regular revenge until I read that you drove all the way to Florida. Well done. That kind of commitment and effort makes it pro. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video to the end, and I'll see you in the next one.